My name is Clara. I am 34 years old. I live in a small apartment now. It has white walls. It has one big window. I can see the street from my desk. I work at that desk every day. I am a graphic designer. I make posters. I make brand identities. I love this work. I have always loved this work. I want to tell you my story. It is not a happy story at first, but it becomes one. It took a long time. It cost me a lot. I am still here. I grew up in a small town. My mother worked at a bakery. My father fixed cars. We did not have much money, but my parents were good people. They worked hard every day. I watched them work. I always drew pictures. I drew on everything. I drew on paper bags. I drew on old envelopes. My mother saved my drawings. She taped them to the refrigerator. She said I had a gift. I did not know what that meant then. I know now. I studied design in college. It was hard. I worked 2 jobs at night. I was very tired every day, but I loved my classes. I loved learning about color. I loved learning about space and shape. I loved making things look beautiful. I finished college at 22. I was proud. My mother cried. I looked for jobs after college. It was difficult. I sent many applications. Most companies did not reply. Some said I had no experience. That felt unfair. How do you get experience without a job? I did not understand. Then I found the posting. It was for a junior designer position. The company was called Voss Creative. It was a design agency. It worked with big brands. The work looked exciting. I sent my portfolio. I waited 3 days. Then I got a call. Her name was Helen Voss. She was the owner of the agency. She called me herself. That felt important. She asked me good questions. She seemed interested in my work. I felt nervous. I also felt excited. The interview was at her office. The office was beautiful. There were big windows with bright light. Fresh flowers were on every table. I had never been in a place like that. Helen was tall. She wore a dark blue blazer. Her hair was perfect. She smiled often. She had straight white teeth. She looked at me like I was interesting, like I mattered. I felt important in that room. She said she liked my portfolio. She said I had a fresh eye. She said fresh eyes were hard to find. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. She offered me the job that day. I said yes immediately. I started the next Monday. I was so happy. I wore my best shirt. I arrived early. The other designers were friendly. There were 4 of us. We shared a big open studio space. The walls were covered in mood boards, color swatches, print samples. I loved it immediately. My first project was a logo for a bakery, a small local client. Helen gave me the brief. She explained what they wanted, something traditional, something that felt like home. I worked on it for 2 days. I made 12 versions. I showed them to Helen. She looked at each one carefully. She did not say much. Then she pointed to one. I asked what she liked about it. She said it felt right. She did not explain more. I learned that was how she worked. The client loved the logo. Helen presented it to them. She came back and said they were very happy. She did not say my name to the clients, but she told me later. She said, "Good work, Clara." I felt proud. I smiled all day. The months passed. I worked hard. I came in early. I took on more projects. I got better. My work got stronger. Helen gave me bigger clients, more complex briefs. I was grateful. I thought she believed in me. In the second year, we won a big account. I worked on that campaign for 6 weeks. I designed everything: the logo, the color palette, the typography system, the seasonal lookbook. I was exhausted. I was also very proud. Helen presented the campaign to the client. I was not invited. She said the meeting room was too small. She said only senior people could attend. I accepted that. I was still junior. I understood. The client signed the contract. It was a large contract. She was glowing. She was happy in a big way. She opened a bottle of champagne. We all celebrated. She toasted the team. She said, "We did great work." She smiled at all of us. She did not say my name. I noticed that. But I told myself it did not matter. We were a team. That was what she said. We were a team. In my third year, something started to feel different. I was not sure what it was. It was a small feeling, like something was not right. I ignored it. I kept working. A journalist came to the office. She was writing about creative agencies. She wanted to interview Helen. I saw them in the conference room. The door was glass. I could see them. Helen was speaking with her hands. She was animated. She was laughing. The article came out 2 weeks later. I read it online. Helen talked about her design philosophy. She talked about her love of bold color. She talked about how she created the look for the clothing brand campaign. She described the choices I made. She used the exact words I had used in my own notes. She said she personally chose the dusty rose and the cream tones. She personally chose the white space serif font. I sat very still at my desk. My hands were cold. My stomach felt tight. I read the article again. My name was not in it, not once. She was the public face. That was her job. I was a designer. I worked behind the scenes. That was fine. That was how it worked. But I kept thinking about it. At night on the train home, the feeling did not go away. In my 4th year, I designed a full brand identity for a luxury hotel. It was the biggest project I had ever done. I worked on it for 3 months. I did not take days off. I filled 2 entire sketchbooks. I tested hundreds of color combinations. I made decisions about every detail. The symbol, the wordmark, the stationery system, the signage templates, everything. Helen reviewed my work each week. She gave notes. Some notes were good. They helped. But the core ideas were mine. The direction was mine. She pointed and said, yes or no. I created. The hotel client came for the final presentation. Helen stood at the front of the room. She clicked through my slides. She said I, over and over. She said I designed this. I chose this color. I created this mark. I had a vision for this identity. I sat at the back of the room. I was there but invisible. The clients nodded. They loved everything. They shook Helen's hand. They said she was a genius. I drove home that night. I sat in my car for a long time. The street was quiet. The light outside was orange. I was not sad. I was confused. I was trying to understand what I had seen. She said I designed this. She did not design it. I did. I went back to work the next day. I did not say anything. I did not know how. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself this was normal business. I told myself to be grateful for the job. So I stayed. And I kept working. Year 5, year 6, the work continued, the clients were bigger. My skills grew sharper. I could solve design problems faster now. I had developed a style. My work had a feeling. A specific kind of calm, confidence, clean lines, thoughtful color, space that breathed. People who saw our agency's work started to recognize it, but they thought it was Helen's work. She gave talks at conferences. She was invited to speak on panels. She was photographed for design magazines. She always talked about her creative process. She talked about how she trusted her instincts, how she developed her aesthetic over many years. She was becoming famous in the design world. I watched this from my desk. I attended some events. I sat in the audience. I clapped. I smiled. I said nothing. My colleagues noticed. Some of them. Maria, one of the other designers, sat next to me at a talk once. She said, "That color system she talked about, that was yours." I looked at Maria. I said yes. Maria looked at me for a long moment. She did not say more, but she saw it. I knew she saw it. His name was David. He was older than me. He had more titles on his resume. Helen introduced him to clients. She said, "This is David, our senior creative lead." I had been there 7 years. I had no title like that. I asked Helen once about my title. She said titles were not important. She said what mattered was the work. I felt angry. I pressed my lips together. I said, "Okay." I went back to my desk. My hands were cold again. I did not know how to leave. This was my life. This was what I knew. I had given 10 years of my best ideas to this place. If I left, what did I have? Nothing with my name on it. Nothing I could point to and say I made that. That was the trap. I understand it now. At the time, I just felt stuck. Year 8. A very big thing happened. The Industry Association announced its annual awards. The design world paid attention to these awards. They were prestigious. They meant something. Our agency was nominated for Best Brand Identity for the hotel project. My hotel project. I told myself to be calm. I told myself this was good for the agency. The agency paid my salary. If we won, that was good for everyone. We won. Helen went to the ceremony. I was not invited. She wore a red dress. She took the award. She stood at the podium. She had tears in her eyes. She talked about her years of work. She talked about her dedication to beauty. She thanked her clients. She thanked her team, briefly, collectively, without names. She held the award up. I watched the live stream alone at home. I sat on my couch. The room was quiet. The screen was the only light. I watched her hold that award for work I made. I felt something break inside me. I did not sleep that night. The next morning, I went to work. Helen had the award on her desk. It was gold. It caught the light. I could see it from across the room. I walked to her office. I knocked on the open door. She looked up. She was smiling. She was still happy from the night before. I said, "I need to talk to you about the award." She said, "Of course. Sit down." She was calm. She was pleasant. She gestured to the chair. I sat. I was cold. My hands were in my lap. I said the hotel project was my work. I said I designed everything. I said I spent 3 months on it. I said you presented it as yours. I said you won an award for my work. The room was very quiet. Helen looked at me. Her smile changed. It did not disappear, but it changed. Something behind her eyes shifted. She put her hands flat on her desk. She was still. She said, Clara, this agency is a collaborative environment. She said all our work is the agency's work. She said she directed the project. She said she guided my vision. She said, without her direction, I would have produced something very different. I said no. I said I have the sketchbooks, I have the files, I have the revision history. I said my ideas were there from the beginning. I said your notes were small. They were directional. They were not creative. Her smile was completely gone now. Her voice was lower. She said, I built this agency. She said, I bring in the clients. She said, without me, there would be no projects for you to work on. She said, I gave you a career. She said, I gave you 10 years of work. I said, I gave you 10 years of work. My voice was shaking. I did not want to cry in that room. I held the tears back. She leaned forward. Her voice was very quiet now. She said, if you continue this conversation, I will have no choice but to let you go. She said she hoped I understood that. She said she had many relationships. She said she could make things difficult. I understood what she meant. She was threatening me. She was threatening my career. She was saying that if I spoke the truth, she would punish me. The room was very cold. My hands were shaking now. I pressed them together. I looked at her. She looked back. She was waiting. I stood up. My voice was still shaking, but the words came out clear. I said I quit. I said today is my last day. I said I will clean out my desk. She said fine. She looked down at her papers. She was done with me. Just like that. I walked out of her office. Maria looked up from her desk. She could see my face. She said nothing. I could not speak anyway. I went to my desk. My hands shook while I packed my things. A mug, a plant, some books, my sketchbooks. Oh, my sketchbooks. I walked out of Voss Creative for the last time. The door closed behind me. I stood on the sidewalk. The sun was bright. It hurt my eyes. People walked past me. Taxis went by. I was 32 years old. I had no job. I had some savings. Not much. I had 10 years of experience that I could not prove was mine. I had my sketchbooks. I had my files on a hard drive I carried with me. I was terrified. I went home. I sat on the floor of my apartment. I did not sit on the couch. I sat on the floor. I leaned against the wall. The room was quiet. I stayed there for a long time. I felt stupid. I was angry at Helen, but I was also angry at myself. I stayed 10 years. I let it happen 10 years. I told myself it was fine for 10 years. I was angry at myself for that. My mother called that evening. I told her what happened. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Clara, you know what you made. She said, no one can take that from you. She said, they can take the credit but not the knowledge. She said, you still have your hands. I started crying then. On the floor of my apartment. My mother stayed on the phone. She did not talk. She just stayed there. That helped. The next weeks were hard. I looked for jobs. I sent applications. I went to interviews. Some went well. Some did not. I spent my savings carefully. I made coffee at home. I stopped buying lunch out. I counted every dollar. I also started working on my own small projects, things I found through friends. A friend needed a logo for her pottery business. I made it. I charged very little, but I made it. It had my name on it. For the first time in 10 years, something had my name on it. I made a simple website. I called it Clara Park Design. I was not sure if that was the right name, but I used my name. I wanted my name on my work. I uploaded some personal projects, things I had made just for myself over the years. Work I had never shown anyone at Voss. This work looked different. It was freer. The colors were bolder. The compositions were more surprising. It was still calm and confident, but it was looser, more alive. I was scared every day. Some mornings I woke up at 4 in the morning. My mind was loud. I thought about money. I thought about what Helen had said about her industry relationships. I thought about whether she was making phone calls about me. I thought about whether I had made a mistake. I got out of bed. I made tea. I sat at my desk. I worked. That was all I could do. I worked. I got more small clients. Another friend, a friend's cousin, a neighbor who had a small business. Word started to spread a little. People liked my work. They told other people. I was not earning much, but I was earning, and every invoice had my name on it. Clara Park Design. That meant something to me. I cannot explain exactly how much it meant, but it was everything. In the 10th month after I left, I got an email. I did not recognize the sender's name. The subject line said, "We have been trying to find you." I almost deleted it. It sounded like spam, but I opened it. The email was from the creative director of a large food company. He said his company was redesigning their entire brand. He said they had looked at many agencies. He said they wanted a specific feeling in the work, a specific kind of calm confidence, clean and honest and warm. He said they had noticed this quality in several pieces over the years, pieces attributed to Voss Creative. He said they reached out to Voss Creative. He said Helen Voss had come in for a meeting. He said her current work did not match what they had admired. It did not have the same quality. He said something felt different. He said one of his colleagues had found my website. He said they looked at my personal work. He said the quality was there. The feeling they were looking for was there. He said they believe I was the designer they had been looking for. He wanted to meet. Then I sat very still. The room was quiet. My hands were in my lap. I wrote back. I said I would be happy to meet. The meeting was in a large conference room. There were 4 people across the table from me. I was alone. I had my sketchbooks. I was nervous. My hands were cold under the table. But I talked about my work. I talked about my ideas. I talked about what I believed design should feel like. I talked about the specific choices I made, why I chose certain colors, why I chose certain type, what I was trying to communicate. I talked about it all myself. I did not let anyone else present my ideas. They listened carefully. They asked good questions. I answered them honestly. At the end, the creative director said they would be in touch within the week. They called me in 3 days. They said yes. The contract was the largest of my career. I worked on it for 4 months. I stayed up late many nights. I hired a freelance assistant. For part of the project, I was organized. I was focused. I delivered everything on time. They loved it. They said it was exactly right. They said it felt genuine. They said it felt human. They signed a follow-up contract immediately. Things changed after that slowly. Not dramatically, not overnight, but the work kept coming. One client told another. My website got more traffic. I started getting emails from people I did not know. Real inquiries. Companies looking for real help. I raised my rates again. People still said yes. I hired a second designer. She reminded me of myself at 22. Eager and a little nervous and very talented. I told her something in her first week. I told her every piece that leaves the studio has the designer's name on it internally. Every sketch. I said I will always know who made what. I said that matters here. She looked at me with wide eyes. She said thank you. I did not explain why I said it. She did not need to know the whole story. Around this time, I started hearing things about Voss Creative. People in the industry talk. It is a small world. Someone told me that several of Helen's longtime clients had left. Someone told me her agency had lost 3 big accounts in 1 year. Someone said her new work was not as strong. Someone said she was struggling. I did not feel happy when I heard these things. I want to be honest about that. I expected to feel something like satisfaction, but I did not. I felt mostly tired and a little sad. Not for Helen, for the time, for the 10 years. A journalist contacted me during this time. She was writing about independent design studios. She wanted to interview me. I agreed. We met at a coffee shop near my studio. She asked what I believed made my work distinctive. I thought about this for a moment. I said I believe good design is honest. I said, it tells the truth about what something is. I said, you cannot fake the real feeling of a brand. I said, people can feel when design comes from a genuine place. I said, they can feel when it does not. She wrote that down. She underlined it. The article came out the next month. It was a good article. My name was in the headline. Clara Park, the designer building something real. The morning was quiet. The light came through the window. I read my name in the headline. I read about my work, my ideas described in my words. I held the article for a long time. I did not post it anywhere immediately. I just held it. I let myself feel it. It was a small feeling, but it was a full feeling. Something settled in my chest. Clara Park Design now has 4 designers. We have a small studio with good light. We work on interesting projects. We work with clients who treat us like partners. Clients who ask questions, who are curious, who trust our thinking. I still design myself. I have not stopped. The work keeps me connected to why I started. I remember the girl who drew on paper bags. I remember the college student who worked 2 jobs at night. I remember the junior designer in the beautiful office with white. I remember her watching a presentation from the back of the room, invisible, silent, her work on the screen, and her name nowhere. I think about her sometimes. When I sign a contract, when I present my work to a client and say when I say I designed this, when I say this was my idea, when I say, let me show you my thinking. Every time I say those words, I think of her. She deserved to say them so much sooner, but she is saying them now. I know now what I did not know then. I know that someone can take the credit for your work, but they cannot take the work out of you. It stays. The skill stays. The ideas stay. The way your mind works stays. Helen put her name on my designs, but she could not put her name on my ability to create new designs. She took the product. She could not take the source. The source was always mine. They sit on a shelf in my studio. 31 notebooks, 10 years of ideas, all in my handwriting, all with my date stamps. Every sketch, every note, every bad idea, I crossed out and started again. They are not evidence of anything legal. They are for me. They are proof to myself. They say I was here. I was thinking. I was working. Even when no one said my name, I was here. The window is open. It is a warm morning. I can hear the street below. My tea is next to my keyboard. My screen is open to a new project. A new brief, a new client, a food company that makes honey. Small, family-owned, 3 generations. They want to feel timeless. They want to feel real. They want people to see the jar and feel something warm. I read the brief last night. I slept on it. This morning, I woke up with something in my head. A color, a particular shade of amber, and a typeface. Simple, old, dignified, and a mark. Round, like the inside of a hive, like something built slowly and with care. I picked up my pencil. I started drawing. My name is Clara. These are my ideas. This desk is mine. This studio is mine. This pencil is mine. I am just getting started.